Hello and welcome to this track analysis video. It's been quite a while since we've done one of these videos, but I've got a brand new track for you today. And the track is by Mau P and it's called Like I Like It. But the track really stood out to me mainly because of the bass line and a few other elements that I thought would be quite interesting to show on the channel. And as always, we're going to go through the recreation I made of the song. I've only really focused on the first drop and just a little bit after that. You'll be able to download the free preset pack in the description below of this video. Plus on our Patreon, there will be an extended version of this tutorial with more detail on other parts of the track, extra presets and extra samples, as well as Ableton Live, audio effect racks and drum kits. But let's not wait around and let's get into the song. So as always, let's start with the general features of the project. We're at 128 beats per minute, which is just a classic house tempo. And the song is in G sharp minor. It could be also seen as being in G sharp harmonic minor as well, which we'll talk about later on. And we're going to start out with the main thing that drew me to this track, which is the bass line. And as a lot of you might already know, this bass line uses a classic legendary synthesizer called the TB-303 by Roland. It was released in 1981 and it was designed to actually replace the bass guitarist in, say, a band if someone wanted to perform live. As you probably can tell, it didn't really sound like a bass guitar, so later it was then discontinued only 3 years later in 1984. But like with one of the other Roland machines as well, this was then picked up by other music producers at the time, and it really defined a lot of genres that we listen to today. Some classic songs to have a listen to if you don't know the sound of this: Higher State of Consciousness by Josh Wink and Daft Punk's Da Funk are two classics that I always remember the sound of. And in this track, the sound actually sounds a lot like the real 303, or at least a very good emulation. I'm going to be using Serum 2 in our breakdown today just because it's very accessible, but if you wanted to find some other recreations out there, you could look at the Roland Cloud 303 version. Phocion, I think that's how you pronounce it, by D16. Also, there's an Arturia version, and Silent is also a very good synth to try this out on too. In terms of hardware, the original 303 is ridiculously expensive now, but there are some newer versions that Roland brought out, like the TB3, which is a more digital version of that. And Behringer have also made a clone of it, which is a lot cheaper, called the TD3. And if we look at the bass line, it's quite a simple bass line. It's going to be mainly focused around our G sharp, as we said before. And you can see, for example, this note here overlaps into the next note above, and the same with the note after that, and even the one after that too. So you'll hear this note becomes one big long note. The overlapping also activates the glide feature too, so it bends up and down between those notes. And this second note here and the note after are also an octave apart, again, which is just a very common feature within these bass lines. We've also got this note here and this top note, which is 2 octaves above that lower one. Outside of these octave notes, we've only really got a few extra notes in this sequence. We've got an F sharp, which jumps up and down in this octave here. We have a D sharp, which also gets played down here as well. But that's it. There's only 3 notes in this whole bass line, but jumping up and down between these different octaves gives it that range and makes it feel more complex than it actually is. And even though there are a lot of notes in here, a lot of them are blended into these big long notes. So really, you only have this note, this note, this note, this one, that one, that one, and then that one, and all the other notes are blended into that note and used to kind of glide up and down. So this is really the main part of our rhythm, are these notes that have a gap in between them. And the first half of the bass line is quite smooth. There's only really 2 notes in the first 2 beats. And then the second half has a bit more rhythm because the notes are separate from each other. And the bass line throughout the whole song is essentially the same. At some point over here later on, it does change over to this slightly different bass line. Just a very slight change. And then another thing that happens later on as well is as we lead up to the final drop, the cutoff of this acid bass starts to increase like this. And it can be difficult generating bass lines like this, especially in step sequences if you're having to do that. Drawing in these bass lines can also be quite difficult to know exactly where to place the notes. But there is a great Max for Live tool called Sting by Skinner box. And this is essentially just a bassline generator perfect for 303 style basslines. So when you place it in, it's a MIDI effect, so it'll come before your serum. And if we just play it, I normally like to turn the density up a little bit more on here so you get a few more notes. And you can also use the transpose up here to bring the semitone value down so it's a little bit lower, but most of the time I'll just actually use a pitch MIDI effect after sting and drop it by an octave. I'll play it with the drums, and all we have to do is just click on the smiley face here and it's just going to generate new ideas. And what I'd suggest is when you're happy with a bass line like this, you might want to make some slight adjustments to the bass line. There's no real way to do it at the moment because it's just generating notes from the plugin. If though we make a MIDI track underneath, on the input here we'll pick the acid bass, which is the track we were just playing then. And it's important to make sure that we're on post effects as well, but we'll make sure record enable is on that track and then we'll hit record. And that will record the actual notes that are being played out of Sting here. And now all we have to do is just turn Sting off and the pitch, bring this MIDI back up to our original track, and now we have that bass line. And this does bring us nicely onto our bass patch, which I said I made in Serum 2 here. Now the bass sound did end up being a little bit noisier than the original, but I was really trying to get that nice mid-tone that you can hear in the original track. And it does make me think that this bass line in the song is either a hardware version of a 303 or it's a very good emulation like the actual Roland Cloud 303. It just has that really nice tone that a lot of synthesizers struggle to get. But when you listen to it with the drums, it still sounds pretty good. And when we're looking through this patch, there are two key important parts to making this sound, and that is the saw drift 303, which is one of the new wavetables in the Serum 2 tables section. And the other important feature is the filter. And again, one of the new filter types that we've got in Serum 2 is the acid ladder, which I can imagine is based off the Roland 303 filter type. And it does sound quite a lot different to other filters, and the filter is really what makes the 303 sound like the 303. A lot of synthesizers can't get the filter type right, and even the one in Serum here isn't exactly perfect, especially when you get the cutoff frequency very high. Because if I start to bring up the resonance and the cutoff down here in the macros that I've set up, you get that lovely like squelchy 303 type of filter. And if we just change to, for example, a normal filter type, I'm going to pick like a low 18 here. It's just missing that grittiness that, again, that 303 filter has. The keyboard tracking is turned off. The resonance, as you can see, is quite high and it's controlled by this macro down here, and the cutoff as well, which for the preset is set up like this with the cutoff at 0 and the resonance at 50. I've not actually got any drive turned on in here. I've not used a smooth either, which doesn't really work with this filter type. The other important thing about the 303 is the envelope modulation of the filter, and that's what of course creates that sweeping acid sound that you can hear. And the envelope is just a no sustain longish decay, and you can also control the envelope amount, which is another feature on the 303 down in the macros too. And the other important thing that I've got in the patch that I feel like it needed was just a sub, which is set up on the right here. And this is a sine wave with just a very small amount of this second harmonic here to just make it a little bit warmer overall. But as I've talked a little bit about before, I've then sent these two to separate locations. So my oscillator A here, of course, is going to filter 1, and then filter 1 has been set to none. but it's being sent at 0 dB to bus 1. And my sub here is just being sent to the main output. So now the acid bass is coming through on bus 1 here without the sub. And this is useful just because I've put a few OTTs on here, quite a low mix setting, a little bit of EQ to cut out some of the low mids on this bass sound, a little bit of distortion, not loads though, and then another EQ to add this small bump here about 1500 hertz. But then I've got bus 1, of course, going out through to the main, which is where the sub is also coming to. And then I'm just compressing them both very slightly. Just to help glue those two layers together because they might sound a little bit separate with the processing. Also, again, very importantly, just to show we've got the mono turned on, legato turned on as well, and the portamento is set to about 100 here. In this preset, you should also check out some of the other dials that I've got in here. I've got another one for the envelope length as well for envelope 2. Again, this patch is available in the description below, as well as all the other presets and samples that are shown in this video. And with that, let's talk about the drums. The drums in this song are heavily based around the 808 drum kit. Another legendary drum machine by Roland, the TR-808. And in the kit here, pretty much all the sounds are from the 808 kit, apart from a few. I did synthesize the kick drum though to make it sound a bit chunkier. And this is what the drums sound like in the first drop. Looking at the drum pattern, of course, we've got a kick drum on every single beat. We do have this alternating clap pattern, which does sound nice, where we've got a snare and a short clap on the first clap. And then on the second one, we've got snare, the same clap, and then this more 808 style clap in between. We've got an open hat here, which is the 808 open hat from the kit that's just been shortened. And we've also got the closed 808 hat here, which, as you can see, plays in and around that open hat. We've got a cymbal at the beginning, and then we also have a little drum snare fill at the end here. Now, the big thing about this song is everything is quite simple. The bass line is only a bar in length. What makes this track sound good, first of all, is the vocals. Vocals are kind of like a cheat code for any kind of track, really. They'll just make it sound a lot more interesting than it maybe is. But the other big thing is variation. And I've tried to highlight this here from the first drop. So the first drop, we have what we just listened to then with the snare roll at the end of that fourth bar there. In the second 4 bars, we get the same thing. But we get this snare roll added in. And we also get no snare roll at the end. And then again, we get another variation on this second half of the drop after 8 bars. And in this second half of the drop, we get this additional kind of more like a shakery feel open hat that comes in. And as you can hear, it just gives this lovely lift going into that second half without really doing too much. You're not changed the drum pattern, we've just layered in another hi-hat in that second section. And then we have another variation again. It's the same open hi-hat layered on top as we said before. We've also got the snare roll in the middle, but then we have the kick drum cut out to signify there's a big change coming up. So 21 to 37, that's our 16 bar section. And now we're going to change into something quite drastically different. So the kick drum comes out, these chords also come in at that point too, and then we move into, again, another variation. It's the same original drum beat underneath all of this, but we've also got some additional bits of percussion in here now. We've got this rim shot sound and this cowbell. And we also have, sounds like a soft kind of ride in the background, and I've made this one here that has a bit of a fade out at the beginning. And this also happens in the build up too. In the intro, you have that original beat. And then as we go into the build up, we just have a simple auto filter. Just turns on and off. Again, another variation, but if you were to look at this whole song, the drum beat doesn't really change apart from those small little features. Another thing to point out as well is that there is no swing or groove in this track. It's just part of this style. The 303 does have a swing feature on there, but it always sounds a little bit weird in my opinion. And just to talk a little bit about the drum group here, we have a glue compressor on the group. Not really doing anything, to be honest. It's got a very long attack. We've also got the sidechain EQ turned on. I've also got my new plugin, which if you've not already seen, released just the other day, called Auto Clip, which is just providing a little bit of extra lift on these drums. So this is before. And if you listen to this in the whole track, you'll hear it just brings the drums out a little bit more. Again, it's out now. You can see the link in the description below, and it's at an introductory offer at the moment. But if you do get it now, you get a permanent license and you get all the free updates that come afterwards too. And that's all I've done on the drum bus here. Nice and simple, nothing over the top. Let's talk a little bit about these chords. They only really play in this section here, and I think a little bit later on in the song, and they sound like this. Now these chords are interesting because they actually live within the harmonic minor series rather than the regular minor series, which is why I said at the beginning it could be one or the other. And these chords are just a big stack of notes. I actually ended up leaving in this low note here. But these chords are just a big stack, starting off D at the bottom here. We've got the root note, third, fifth, seventh, root note, third again. It just makes the chord a little bit more interesting than your regular minor sequence. In terms of the synth patch, I went for this kind of organy type of sound, as you can hear. Quite a bit of unison, just a regular saw and oscillator A. The same goes for B, but I put it on this brass stab sound because it had more harmonics and overtones. And I also pitch, importantly, this oscillator up by an octave, so it gives it that organ type of feel. It has like this interesting fade in at the beginning of each note, very, very short one. So on envelope 2, I've got it set to the cutoff of this low pass filter over here with just a short attack, 20 millisecond. I'll turn this off. I can imagine it might even be a sample in the original track as well. And of course, we've not really talked about the vocals, but I can't really show them on my videos anymore because I've been getting too many copyright claims. But they sample a song of the same name, Like I Like It, by Aurra, I think is how you say it. Pretty much just sounds like the same vocals or a snippet of the vocal with some repeated sections as well. But there's also, of course, the second vocal, which sounds like it's been recorded after making the song to kind of line up with that first vocal, that spoken word vocal you can hear in the track. Not much really to talk about those, honestly. It's just chopping and rearranging a sample. Now, I found the lead sound, though, a little bit more interesting because as soon as I heard this, my brain immediately recognized the melody from the song Give It To Me by Timbaland, which sounds like this that I've recreated above. Again, go and have a listen to that track. It's got Nelly Furtado in it as well. You'll be able to hear that sample in the background. And it makes me think that maybe this is sampled from that song, or at least it's been inspired by that song. And so all I did was I made that lead, again, preset is in the description below, and then I exported it out to an audio file and rearranged it like it is in the track. And then the whole thing is just pitched down by 7 semitones. But this time, this note here is actually the third note in the sequence instead of the second one. But again, super, super simple. And that's the song. That's literally the whole song. I know it didn't seem like a lot to talk about in terms of composition, because I really just wanted to mainly talk about that acid bass sound at the beginning. And the really important thing with this whole song is it's very, very simple ideas with a lot of variation Automation plays a big part, adding in subtle variations at the end of different sections, percussion, layers. There's no big changes throughout the song, it's just the same idea throughout, but the variations are what makes it interesting. And of course, this is really more of a club-oriented track. It's designed to be played in a club. And of course, the vocals are a massive part of this song too. As I said earlier on, all the stuff we've covered in the video today will be in the free preset pack in the description below, but there will be an extended version of this tutorial on our Patreon. You can become a supporter, it's only £5.50 a month, and you'll get an extended version of this tutorial with some more mixing and in-depth analysis, but you'll also get access to all of the previous track breakdowns and other videos that we've done and all the samples within those too. And it really is a massive help and does support the channel, so have a look at that. And also, if you are interested in learning any of this stuff, we have online one-to-one tuition and video courses too, so head to the website as well. But thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.